We're here today with Marilyn August of wealthyu.com, and we're going to dive into how to handle money objections. Now, you know them all. I don't have the budget. I can't afford it. Your competitor has a better price. Your price is too high. All of these things can set off triggers in us based on our own psychology around money. And certainly they're being driven by our prospects and customers' relationship with money. So Marilyn's going to talk with us on how we can get past these triggers that we have and really take money objections off the table. Then just for kicks, I asked her about her most embarrassing sales story. So about minute 20, she is sharing with us something that will make us all feel a bit better about our selling skills, considering what a pro she is. Even the best can screw up. So please have some fun with that and learn how to take care of your money objections. We're here today with Marilyn August, who's a longtime sales executive as well as a sales coach and advisor who works with small and mid-sized companies and will even be a stand-in sales manager for them. So in the process, Marilyn, of actually becoming other companies' sales managers, you've had to deal with dozens of different business types. And I know you have a particular passion for dealing with money objections, which we're going to talk more about today. But I would love to know what you found are the most common objections that people hear, regardless of the type of business that they're in.
Well, Mary, you know the objections that we all have ourselves. It's the objection called, I can't afford it. And the second favorite is, we don't have the budget. Boy, do I hate that word, budget. Just say it. Don't you feel like limitations as soon as you say the word budget?
It makes you feel poor. Exactly.
It feels poor. I have a wallet wisdom that says budgets work about as well as diets. So those are the two that most salespeople hear all the time. Yeah. That is any industry, just about any product except for a commodity. In a commodity, they're always telling you, well, I can get it cheaper.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no fun to sell to either.
No, it's very difficult to sell to I can get it cheaper.
Okay.
Because if you use the words like, oh, well, we give better service or other supposed value propositions on a commodity sale that they can get cheaper, it's very difficult for the salesperson to overcome that with the typical things that salespeople say. It really takes some thought on management's part to give the salespeople some really good reasons for somebody to buy a commodity type product that's price sensitive. So I sometimes advise clients that are in that kind of business, although that's not my favorite kind of business, is to have some package situations where there's some volume deals. And you see that a lot. That's how they overcome those money objections. But we're talking about a more complex sale where it's not just a commodity.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would imagine, because if it is truly a commodity that sale that you're dealing with, and you say, but we provide more service, they're going to say, well, take the cost of that service out. I don't want it.
Yes. And then you have the problem of, what if you don't provide better service? What if your customer service person had a bad day, or maybe they don't care about customer service? I've stayed with a couple vendors that I do business with because of their customer service, but if their pricing was way out of line, I might change. I just changed my credit card provider. I just canceled them after years and years and years because they put some fees on there that they didn't explain to me. Mm-hmm. And, so I said, okay, enough is enough. I've been a loyal customer. You obviously don't appreciate my loyalty. And nobody had authority. This is another problem for salespeople. Nobody had authority to make any concessions to keep me as a customer.
Yes, that is crazy. So obviously, if you're selling a commodity, you're expecting that your customers are price sensitive. If you're in a different marketplace, is there a way to recognize that you're dealing with a price sensitive prospect right up front? Maybe be able to screen them out even so you can deal with more price insensitive prospects?
Well, I think the thing to do, you're absolutely right. The thing to do is to screen them out early and often. One of the things I work with, and not every salesperson can work with this, depending on what the company's targets are. And that's why I do a lot of sales process development, because they send salespeople out into the field and they haven't done what I call an ideal client profile. An ideal client profile from a psychographic point of view. Psychographic is a fancy term that simply means the qualities and characteristics of that company. So part of the demographics is, what are their revenues? Are they a growing company? Part of the psychographics are, how are decisions made?
Okay.
Because typically, if the person you're talking to doesn't have authority, another thing that's changed in taking a risk to take you to the next level, to the decision maker, if there's 2 or 3 decision makers, the important thing is to know the decision maker style and whether or not your inside champion will take a risk and take you there. So sometimes the person you're talking to will say, well, we can't afford it, just because they're afraid to take it to the next level.
So if you're dealing with a price-sensitive customer, that probably is their real objection.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're dealing with a price-insensitive customer, that might not necessarily be the true objection. And so as a sales rep, knowing how they make decisions before you go in there, you would know, you could kind of triage how to deal with that objection, I would imagine.
Right, and exactly. The ideal is to not attract those kind of people. But on the other hand, I mean, we're not in a perfect world. So a lot of questioning. The answer to the money objection is that I'd say 50 to 75% of the time it's not about money. There's some, I call them hidden agendas, and I can tell you the Charlie story in a minute. But the idea is to find out what the real objection is. So one of the questions to ask is, when they bring that up, is what's the risk of taking this to your boss? Or what's the risk? What's the next steps? Let's say you could afford it. One of the ways that I counter money objections, and this, I don't know if this is answering this question, but one of the things to do for a salesperson is to literally divorce the money from the decision-making process. And the way you can do that is to ask questions like, if we weren't talking about money, would we be going to the next level?
Okay.
What would be happening if we weren't talking about money? Because what you want to probe is not to overcome the money objection,
right,
but to find out if it is a money objection, right, or what the hidden agenda is. That's the skill. That's the art and skill of a professional salesperson, is, can you manage your own triggers, my own triggers, I've got them too, so that you can ask the questions to uncover the agenda.
Okay. So you mentioned triggers, and that money is a natural trigger for many, if not all of us. Can you explain that more?
Okay, well, let me tell you a story that might help explain it, and then I'll give you there's thousands and thousands of money triggers. We all say, I can't afford it, just like we say Kleenex. It's just a word that people say. I say it, you say it. I think I told you about my neighbor who has 2 motorcycles in his garage, and I will never be able to afford 2 motorcycles, no matter how much money I have. But let me tell you a business story that illustrates that. The salesperson had an appointment. Let's call the guy Charlie. Charlie's a big-time decision maker, and the salesperson goes in with their fancy-dancy presentation, and they're all set to close the deal. Well, what they don't know is that Charlie was late getting to work. And boy, he would have really liked to cancel that meeting. He's just in a hurry. His inbox is filled. He was stuck in traffic. He had a little bit of, he managed his road rage, but not so well.
Yeah.
So he's in a hurry. He doesn't tell the salesperson this, and he's in a hurry, and he's distracted. So he calls his assistant in, and his assistant is very unhappy to attend the meeting, but she's not going to tell the boss that. And the reason his assistant, let's just give her a name. Let's say her name's Susan. Susan had a fight about money with her husband. Now, I don't know if you know that money is about the number 1 cause of divorce. They had this nasty fight about who was spending what.
Okay.
Susan's in the business meeting. You don't know that she had a fight with her husband about money. You don't know that Charlie was late to work. So what are they going to say to get rid of the salesperson as fast as they can? They're going to say, I can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the salesperson is going to say, ooh, they really can't afford it, and thinking about their own personal can't afford it. Or maybe the salesperson had a fight with their husband or wife or significant other. Or maybe they bought the second motorcycle the other day, or they were counting on the commission. Somehow, energetically, when the salesperson really needs the sale, somehow the customer never buys. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So the salesperson's job is to find out what they mean by can't afford it.
Okay.
And 5 magic words in the sales presentation is, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
And the best thing that could happen in that story would be that Charlie reschedules and tells the truth. Tells, I'm just too busy to focus today. I just am in a hurry. It's not that we can't afford it, but we may be able to afford it, but another day, not today. So we're always probing to get to the hidden agenda. So what happens, though, is when I hear can't afford it, I think about my own personal can't afford it.
Okay. So that's what you mean by triggers, is we all have our own baggage associated with what
exactly
can't afford it means, and certainly our prospects have the same. So I would imagine that a sales rep needs to rewire what that objection means to them. It sounds like it could almost be translated into, what is the question the prospect's really asking?
Yes, what is the prospect really saying? And another positive question is, if you could afford it, do we have anything more to talk about? What can we do about that?
Okay.
Is another question. What can we do about that? Where can we find the budget? Let's put the money off the table for now.
Okay.
And pretend that we were moving forward. Okay. So what would the next steps be? And then the person can find out if it really is truly a money objection or just not a high priority. One of the worst things, and I really, from my heart and soul, please, please don't educate your client or your prospect when they're telling you they can't afford it. I go in and I do trainings. That's one of the things I do, is overcoming money objections. And I'll ask, salespeople, seasoned salespeople, what do you do when somebody says I can't afford it? And they say, oh, we just educate them with another value proposition, and we tell them how great this product or service is. And Susan's over there worried about a divorce from her husband because they had this fight about who's spending too much money, or the credit cards are maxed. And she has, when she's saying she can't afford it, she's telling her husband, we can't afford to live like this. But you don't know that as a salesperson.
Right,
right. So then if you do a lot of babbling, a lot of conversation with, but this is the greatest thing since,
right.
She doesn't care.
It sounds like this version of education is more, let me tell you why you're wrong.
Yes, exactly. I love it, Mary. That's perfect. Yeah. Let me tell you why you can afford this. And that is, I get pushback from salespeople all the time when I do this training, because they don't like to think that they buy into the money objection, but they really, really do.
We all have those hot buttons. Yeah, we all have the triggers, like you said. So what if the objection is your competitor can beat your price?
Okay, your competitor can beat your price. Then you could go several ways. You can say, well, let's do a side-by-side comparison, and what would you like me to leave out? That's a great thing. Okay. Do you want me to match my competitor's price? Do you want me to go lower than my competitor's price? What can we leave out? And here's another piece of the internal game of sales. If you really believe that your company isn't giving the best value, or that this person really should go buy it cheaper, then you're not going to be able to play this game. No one's that great actor or actress that they can pretend that if they think they're overpriced, that they're really going to meet their competitor. But if they really believe in what they're selling, and they really know that their company has a better value proposition, I'll bet you that if you do, what would you like to leave out? Or how do you know this product's going to work or this service is going to work? What's their track record? You can do, the key is to not be afraid of that.
Right.
Okay, here's the problem with discounting. The problem with discounting is that the customer never knows the real price. I actually had that situation. Somebody was selling me something and I wasn't interested because reasons that had nothing to do with money. This person made the assumption it was money, and he kept adding value, he kept adding benefits. And what was going through my mind, of course, I always say I'm your worst customer in the whole world. You don't want to sell to me. Every salesperson says that.
God forbid somebody cold call you.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Poor things. I feel sorry for them. I had somebody spam me on LinkedIn, and I felt sorry for them. But what I was going to say about discounting is it's better that your company have some package deals. So, for example, I was just reading something where if they pay in advance, they get a 5% discount. So the customer is giving you something in exchange for the discount rather than you shaving price points. I mean, most people wouldn't have thought of that, but I had never had an experience of somebody actually calling me several times. It was a company back east, and he really wanted to do business with me. And he kept saying, well, you know, it's this, for $5,000 you get this. And then 3 days later, he was going to double it. And another 2 days later, he added something else. And that was a discounting. And he had no credibility by that time.
Right.
And that is something most people don't think of. But if your company can give some benefit for prepayment, or they can have a bulk package deal that the customer might buy. Taking credit cards, most companies take credit cards. That's another thing you can use instead of discounting. Because mostly, I mean, I've had clients who've done $10,000, $15,000 deal where the person on the other end has a company credit card and they're authorized to spend so much money, and they can just put it on their company credit card. And in fact, I had one client who sold to a very large company. I want to maintain confidentiality, but the customer just put it on their company business card. It was a very significant deal. She had a huge sign-off amount of money, and that's another thing to find out, what's your sign-off. And she just said, I don't want to run this through accounting. If I run this through accounting, it's going to take me 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get the PO. Just send me a PO, throw it on my credit card, and we'll be done with it, and I can start using your service. This was a service sale. Perfect. So these are all things that people might have authority to do without running it through channels rather than discounting.
Okay.
So I like the discount for prepayment.
Okay.
Or the thank you for prepayment.
Okay.
And that, again, is a company policy and a company procedure. So that's why, I mean, I don't start out doing sales process. I don't market myself as a sales process person. But oftentimes, Mary, and you've been a salesperson, the salesperson's problems in the field have to do with the process that doesn't support them. That's why I started a program called Building a Sales Culture. So everybody, including accounting, is a salesperson, is on board with this is what the salespeople need. This is going to help bring revenues into the company. And, you know, the salespeople are driving, or the sales process is driving the revenue ship.
Curious, why is it that money objections are your favorite to work with?
Well, it's a specialty of mine because it has so many psychological and emotional aspects.
Okay.
And I started my business with the psychology of money, and somehow sales and money go together, and money objections are the most common. And they're what hurts us emotionally the most, because there's some hidden message inside every one of us. And that's why I also write, as you know, on the fear of success, because we may have to risk somebody's disapproval or even take a risk. It's a lot of risk with overcoming money objections and not buying into them. So that's the reason I particularly specialize in that. And as we said, the goal is to find out whether or not it is a money objection, because so often it's a mask. I should call money the mask.
Right. So I'm curious, as you reflect across your career, I'm sure you've got some personal experiences that now that you're much wiser, you realize, I could have handled that better. So how would you coach yourself in a situation that you could play back?
Okay, this is really embarrassing. I had a prospect that I just thought, they were in love with me. They just thought I wrote a very large, and I don't usually write long proposals, but a very detailed proposal. It was also my dream to be able to do a training plus coaching, because I maintain these 3-day wonders don't work for people anyhow. And this was going to be a 90-day program where I would be intimately involved with the salespeople after we did the training. So the concepts in the training. So it was just ideal for me. Now that I'm talking about it, I realize how I got emotionally involved.
Okay.
What I didn't do was I didn't get enough information on the decision-making process before I wrote the proposal. So I found out after I got into what I call the chase that the president of the company had to make the decision. I had never met with the president of the company.
Okay.
So it then became about all these other things came up, like money, like do we want a traditional training? And unbeknownst to me, I just found out from one of my inside people, there was a secondary person that wasn't sold. So learning about how money decisions are made,
okay,
and probing about the budget. Is there budget? As you said, most of the purchases, there is no budget. Mm-hmm. So somewhere, somehow, we have to find the person who can say yes, even if there is no budget. And the last place you want to be is HR.
Right.
Marketing usually has the power on sales training to make a lot of decisions. Okay. Because marketing's constantly complaining about sales, right. And sales is constantly complaining about marketing. So but I find that depending on the company culture, it might be the marketing VP that has the money that sales doesn't have.
Okay.
And so I didn't find out who's holding the purse strings in that, because they were in love with me and I was in love with the program and everything was a go and they wanted to start right away, and we'd had a little bit of conversation about money. And I also, this is so bad to tell on myself, I also priced it what I thought was very reasonably for a mid-market, and I've learned since that there's such a thing as perceived value, which is another reason why you don't discount. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to go mid-market because I wanted the deal. I learned that one. You bump it by 5. I tell my clients you bump by 20%.
Okay.
So you have some wiggle room, particularly if you're a service company.
Yeah.
And I didn't follow my own advice by bumping the fee. Okay. So it wasn't real.
Okay.
There's a psychology, by the way, to that, perceived value.
Right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that lesson because you can see it so clearly on the other side and you've got the expertise to work through it. So, yeah, thanks for your vulnerability there.
Thank you. That was embarrassing.
Well, Marilyn,
I'm still in the chase, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Still tells me he wants, a year later, 1 year later.
Oh, goodness.
Still wants to do business. Of course, he doesn't know he's not going to get the same price.
Yeah, there you go.
But I just about, I'll make that one phone call, I'll make that. Is there a difference between persistence and annoying? And tell me to stop calling you phone call, and we'll see what happens.
There you go. I love it. You'll have to update us.
I'm embarrassed. That's another reason why we don't deal with money objections. We're embarrassed.
Right, exactly. So to wrap up, Marilyn, what is a piece of advice that you'd give our audience on what is the most important thing that they can do right now so they can manage money objections better on their next sales call?
Okay, there's 2 things. I'll give you 2 things. First of all, they need to really become curious. I have a little picture of a Chihuahua, like a curious dog. So you have to learn curiosity if it's not natural. So the first thing is ask questions. As soon as you hear I can't afford it, automatic ought to be, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
And then that. The second thing is, and I'll give your listeners or your viewers this if you want, I have an exercise that helps them uncover their own personal negative money messages from childhood.
Okay.
And if you want, I will just make that exercise available, but really truly to dig into their own personal ones. I have hundreds of them from my childhood, and I heard we can't afford it so many times, or purchases being agonized over.
Okay.
And I've yet to work with people that if they're willing to get that vulnerable with me, don't say that they didn't hear something. There's very little financial rationality, particularly with raising kids. And in these days, it's just the opposite. They get everything.
Exactly.
So it's just the opposite.
They'll have whole different money.
So it's a probing. It's an internal probing, so that they're not triggered. To manage their triggers. We'll always be triggered, but to manage the triggers.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that gift. We'll put that in the show notes for the audience so that they can take advantage of that exercise. Thanks so much, Marilyn. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom as well on handling money objections. Like you said, it is one of the most important areas for us to really master as sales reps. It makes a huge difference to our company. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it, Mary. This is a great deal of fun.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Don't you just feel smarter already? I tell you, with all of the interviews that I've done for Sales Mastery, most days I feel like I can conquer the world. If you want to make sure to catch all of our interviews with chief sales officers, experts, top sales producers, connect with us on our YouTube channel right here. And if you want access to all of the resources that we have for you at Sales Mastery, you can connect with us right here. Our goal is to make it fun and to make it simple for you to stay on the leading edge of selling. So connect with Sales Mastery for the smart way for you to become your best.